target. Get on the face.
Let's get some back up here.
Though the Desperados series has been around since 2001, it's still incredibly fascinating to think that the shooting, looting antics of cowboys blend so well with real-time strategy and stealth. This latest entry, Desperados 3, proves this yet again, despite having changed developer hands and making a bold return after a 13-year hiatus. Luckily, this long wait has been worth it. Desperados 3 serves as a nice shot in the arm for this niche genre, weaving a thrilling prequel tale fans will appreciate alongside tight strategy game mechanics that are challenging but ultimately rewarding. I'm Aaron from Console Deals, now let's get into why. First things first, Desperados 3 being a prequel to the original Desperados Wanted Dead or Alive absolutely works in its favour. It means that franchise newcomers and veterans alike can easily get invested in the relatively straightforward revenge quest of longtime protagonist John Cooper, whose story this time around sees him travel across 1870s USA and Mexico on the hunt for just one man. Desperados 3 isn't afraid to lean into Wild West cliches like this, but games using this setting are so few and far between, it largely manages to avoid a sense of been there done that. John himself has a suite of tools to help him achieve his goal, which often boils down to simply getting from point A to point B as creatively and quietly as possible. It just so happens that standing in his way are swaths of bandits and outlaws, all of which can pose their own types of problems you must try and work out, using smart forward thinking. The real-time action entirely plays out from a top-down view, as expected, meaning there are literally no barriers to prevent you from planning ahead effectively, adapting to each mission's unique situation and specific objectives as needed. Sometimes this might mean taking out as many bandits from afar, using John's trusty knife to pull off countless stealth kills before the area gets too crowded. Other times, however, when things go real south, you might wish to retreat until enemies lose your scent, or go to town with your set of dual pistols. Each of Desperado 3's levels act as a creative sandbox of opportunity in this way, sharing much in common with IO Interactive's Hitman series, right down to how you can hide bodies in wardrobes, change disguises with certain characters, and replay stages under different circumstances. Alongside John are a handful of other characters that occasionally accompany you into battle, each with their own special abilities. Mexican bear trapper Hector, for instance, can lure in bandits to his location to trap and kill enemies in just one move. Others, like Kate O'Hara, meanwhile, might not be able to kill enemies, but act as a useful decoy when John or any other companion needs to sneak past enemies out of sight. Isabel Moreau is perhaps the most intriguing of these, if only for her voodoo mind control ability that enables you to have guards shoot at each other. All 5 playable characters handled differently enough to make them worthwhile, even if John always remains the most versatile option throughout this 20 or so hour campaign. With levels so stacked with guards and enemies, you might be wondering how Desperados 3 remains a fair challenge rather than just unrelenting punishment. The answer comes in communication. The game is extremely open in relaying to you the info about what's happening on the map at any one time, and this is best evidenced in the cone system that lets you see the gaze of the enemy most closest to you. This, combined with the ability to move the camera to almost any desired angle or depth, makes it relatively easy to overcome tricky scenarios using the various abilities available to you. Also aiding you in this regard is Desperados 3's Showdown mode, which can be triggered at any time to temporarily freeze the action so you can plan complex tactics. This feature is a holdover from the developer's previous game, Shadow Tactics, but is an appreciated addition here that makes taking out multiple enemies at once without anyone else seeing quite the breeze. It's not often needed in early missions, but does become almost a necessity later in the campaign. And for those RTS fans worrying that this will make completing objectives not challenging enough, you can rest easy knowing that Showdown mode is still available, but won't slow things down on the hardest difficulty. All this freedom and possibility does unfortunately mean that Desperados 3 is heavily reliant on quick saving, to the extent that should a minute go by without you doing this, a reminder will appear on the screen. It's obvious what developer Me was going for when implementing this mechanic, but it proves more annoying than helpful in the long run. A simple reminder at the start of each mission to continually save would have been enough to suffice. True, when things really go south and you can't get your progress back, it can be annoying, but this should be a small price to pay if strategy is to be truly rewarded. Another small letdown is in how little the isometric perspective works for Desperados 3's narrative. In addition to in-game conversations between companions and text you can read ahead of missions, a lot of it is relayed via static cutscenes that don't really let you see characters' faces up close. This is a shame considering that each gang member's personality is so unique. The voice work is absolutely top notch, but sadly Desperados 3's technical limitations and its insistence on having you watch the story play out from above primarily means that this intriguing revenge tale carries less weight than it potentially otherwise would. Still, even with these slight ancillary drawbacks included, never once over the course of its dozen or so missions does Desperados 3 fail to engross you in its faithful recreation of the old frontier or empower you using a suite of ingenious stealth abilities. It's likely that those new to the RTS genre will still find some frustrations, namely in the continuous need to quick save, but for the most part Desperados 3 does well to onboard newcomers and offers up just enough tactical depth to satisfy returning fans. There were 7 years between the last Desperados game and this new one, so here's hoping the wait for the next isn't anywhere near as long. We give Desperados 3 a 3 out of 5.